They still have no job in 2019. Well, they answered that question differently. I thought I was wrong, but we were not wrong about the economy. The economy is in crisis. I'll be briefer on the other points, the crisis of delivery. Now, what I mean is that we have a government that specializes in slogans, अच्छे नारे देते हैं. So for everything, there is a slogan ready made and available. Stand up India, digital India, make in India, sit down India, shut up India, because ultimately, when you start asking questions, there is no answer that they can give or they want to give. And in those circumstances, what are we facing? We're facing a situation where there are a number of schemes and projects announced, but the Aam Aadmi does not see the benefit of these schemes and projects. There have been some interesting innovations. I am one of those who's prepared to acknowledge serious things when they're done. One of them, of course, is the construction of toilets. In many villages in northern India, this was a good thing. There was the provision of gas cylinders to poor women who otherwise were cooking with wood or cow dung in an unventilated small room and were breathing toxic fumes, so bad for their health. So these were good things, but the toilets were built, but 65% of them have no running water. The gas cylinders were given, but after the first cylinder was given at a subsidized rate, from the second cylinder onwards, the price was so high that 92% of the beneficiaries have not refilled their gas. So where do we go from here? How is the last mile? The government projects, for example, all villages are electrified. What it means is that an electric connection has reached the village, but it hasn't even reached 10% of the homes in the village. Can we say that village is electrified? It says that there is broadband connectivity throughout India, but how many places have actually got the broadband in the last stage, reaching their homes, reaching their offices? So this reality is sinking in. And amid all of this is what I sadly call the crisis of identity. I don't think India had a crisis of identity before. I think we knew who we were. We were a large, diverse people, where people of every religion, every caste, every creed, every color, every kind of cuisine, every different conviction, every different custom, all of us lived together under the same constitution, and we thrived in the same consensus. And that consensus was very simple. It was on the idea that in a large, diverse democracy like India, you don't need to agree all the time, so long as you agree on the ground rules of how you will disagree. That was what India was all about. That was our democracy, that was our diversity, and we made our diversity into a strength. What has happened in the last 5.5 years is that we have a government that in many ways has fundamentally departed from the sense of who we are. A government that sees diversity as a weakness, not a strength. A government that is fundamentally not committed to pluralism. A government with a very majoritarian Hindutva doctrine that privileges one nation, one election, one nation, one prime minister, one nation, one ruling party, one nation, one language, one nation, one religion. This notion that everyone who dissents from this is anti-national has created very serious cleavages, compounded by a genuine sense of fear among many of our minority populations. I don't know how many of you saw some of the most shame-making videos that were mounted on YouTube in the last few years. The shameful beating to death of a young man, Tabrez Ansari, the day after his wedding. Beaten to death, made to cry Jai Shri Ram. And then when the police found him, instead of being taken to the hospital, he was taken to jail. Where he died. You look at the story, the very sad story of Pehlu Khan, who was carrying cows to a dairy with a license to operate a dairy, and who was beaten, begging for his life on video. He died in hospital. Or the sad story, I can give you so many sad stories, I shouldn't go on. But the father of an Indian Air Force Havildar was beaten to death outside his home, just 20 kilometers from Delhi, on suspicion that the bag of meat he was carrying in his hand was beef. And when this mob beat this man to death, broke into his house, broke open his fridge, took more meat and went off to the police station, instead of arresting them for lynching, the police arrested the meat and sent it off to a lab to find out if it was beef. It wasn't. But is this what our country is now reduced to? Or when 14-year-old, 15-year-old Junaid Khan, coming back from Eid shopping to show his new clothes to his mother, gets beaten up on a train merely because he's visibly Muslim, is stabbed 27 times, thrown off the train to die bleeding on the tracks. Is this our country? This is why Pratap Bhanu Mehta, who is a very respected scholar, has written that we are now a republic of fear for many of our minorities. This is not what India was supposed to be all about. In the name of protecting, for example, the cow, 97% of all the incidents of cow-related violence in our country, 97% of all the incidents since 1947 have occurred in the last 4 years. That's what's happening in our country. So if you tell me, is India in crisis? I tell you it's in a crisis on all these fronts.
So if let's start with the economy, right? Now, Dr. Manmohan Singh recently made an interesting statement about asking the government to use whatever resources are available both in the country and that care about the country to try and solve the crisis that faces us at this point. Have you seen a response from this government? It seems intelligent, it seems well advised, it seems like they actually accept that the economy is in trouble, or are you just seeing ideologically driven flailing about?
Well, I'm afraid I'm just seeing make-believe. I mean, this is a government that believes really that everything can be reduced to an issue of marketing. If you sell it right, it'll get you votes, and that's all that matters. And so, while the economy is in bad shape, there is either denial or there is a concealment even of their denial, and that they're simply acting as if everything is fine. They're celebrating meetings. The chief executive of the Niti Aayog tweets one article about orders for one car, the MG Hector, and says, what crisis? The automobile industry is thriving, whereas the automobile industry as a whole is poised to